So first door is 1905, which should be up there.
Talib Nur Muhammad is trying once more. Even before the election was called, Nur Muhammad was pounding sidewalks in the riding of Vancouver-Granville, trying to do this year what he couldn't do in 2019.
I give that to you.
Thank you very much.
Have you folks thought about how you might vote this time?
Not really. I mean,
Okay.
I have to say last time we voted for Jody.
Former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould won Vancouver-Granville in 2019 as an independent after she was ejected from the Liberal Party. She stood up to the Prime Minister over what she believed was political interference in a court case.
So what's our next door?
This year, if Talib Nur Muhammad looks like he's walking with a bit more spring in his step, it may be because Wilson-Raybould has decided not to run again.
Did you guys have a party the day that Wilson-Raybould announced she wasn't running again?
No, I mean, I think it was...
Actually, she didn't say, I mean, she said some pretty, not against you, but she didn't have some good things to say about what she described, I think, as a toxic environment in the House of Commons, etc.
Look, I mean, I think anyone who has run for office sees the toxicity. And I don't think it's a question of whether you are a sitting member of Parliament or you're just running. We've all seen the types of things that people throw at you during a campaign and afterwards, frankly, and it's not great. And I do think we need to do better. I mean, if we want people of quality, if we want people who are committed to run for office, if we want young people to look at this and say, this is something that I'd like to aspire to do, you have to have there has to be a degree of, I think, civility in how we approach it. I think some of that is lacking, and I do think there's work to be done there. There's no question. But I think the best way to do that work is to be there and to actually fight for that change.
Vancouver-Granville is one of the BC seats the Liberals need to win if they hope to form a majority government. And they'll probably need more than just one. Justin Trudeau's candidates hope to be competitive in several close races in Metro Vancouver. Here's our top 8. Vancouver-Granville, West Vancouver Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country, Steveston, Richmond East, Port Moody, Coquitlam, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, South Surrey, White Rock, and Cloverdale, Langley City. Can you tell me a little bit about the people and the place, Cloverdale? What makes this place special?
Well, Cloverdale really is just a small town in the middle of a big city.
Cloverdale, Langley City is one of the half-dozen BC ridings the Liberals won in 2015 and lost in 2019. Malin Jordan edits the local newspaper here.
I did a few exit polls at the last election, and about 98% of all respondents were saying that they voted party and not person. So I don't think people were particularly unhappy with John Aldag, and he told me that he heard from a lot of people that said it's not you, it's your boss. So, yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen. It's tough. It was a close vote last time. It was about 1,000, just north of 1,000 votes. The People's Party got about 1,000 votes here, which they weren't in the previous election. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough to. It's definitely a battleground riding, to borrow a term from a different electoral area. But the Conservatives and the Liberals know how valuable it is. They parachuted Trudeau down here in the last days of the campaign before the election last year. They had an event just up the street, but and it got a little nasty at the end on the Liberal side, because I think they were feeling the pinch, like they might lose this riding. So I expect them to put a lot of resources into it this time around.
Nobody likes to be stuck in traffic when you could be home with your kids. This will cut commute times and make your lives easier. That means spending more time doing the things you love.
It's so great to be back in BC.
In the past 6 weeks, the Liberals have poured a lot of public resources into Metro Vancouver, billions of dollars in promised spending, including extending a transit line to Langley.
Today, I can announce that the federal government will provide up to $1.3 billion for the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain extension. The new line will connect growing Surrey neighborhoods, the township of Langley, and the city of Langley with the rapid transit families, workers, and students deserve.
By accident or design, analysts say funding things like transit lines may help progressive parties win more elections. High-density housing developments are being built around transit stations. You can see the construction cranes here in Surrey. As the developments expand into traditionally conservative areas south of the Fraser River, they're bringing with them a different kind of voter.
This is an area that used to vote Reform, that used to vote Canadian Alliance. It'll be fascinating to watch what happens this time, because if the election becomes a referendum on the management of the COVID-19 pandemic, then you could see some of those seats going Liberal.
And that's because the migration out of the city or to the suburbs, you think, are people bringing more progressive attitudes, that sort of idea?
Well, it's a combination of factors. I mean, one of them is the fact that Vancouver continues to be very expensive to live in. And you have younger people who are deciding to move elsewhere, maybe be a couple of hours away from the jobs that they have. Obviously, with the pandemic, it's even more complicated because a lot of people are working from home. So do you want to continue paying a high rent or a mortgage in a city, or do you go to a place where you can have more money to spend? That is part of it. But also, most of these newcomers to the area are coming from very different backgrounds. People who are recent immigrants, people who are voting maybe for the first time, and they have different values when it comes to politics than those who have been in that area for 20 or 30 years.
That's not to say these ridings are a slam dunk for the Liberals or the NDP, just that the races are closer now, more competitive.
The Liberals know which ridings they are targeting. And as I mentioned before, these ridings are quite distinct. And so there will be tailor-made policies from the Liberals to win those particular ridings. And
that goes to analytics.
That's right. This will all be done by analytics, polling, focus groups, and whatever other information they can pull together. And so there will be the sort of the broad headlines, but on the ground level, there could be other things driving the vote, and it could be different in one riding and very different in the adjacent riding.
I am very happy to be here at Lafarge Lake Park in Coquitlam with Premier Horgan. John, it's always great to see you, but really great to see you today.
The Prime Minister also wants to emulate the success of BC Premier John Horgan.
The NDP will win the election.
Last year, Horgan also took a chance by calling an early pandemic election. It paid off, and the New Democrats won a majority by winning suburban seats they'd never won before.
One of the things that was really surprising to me about the NDP victory, not that they won, I was expecting that, but the NDP breakthroughs in some of the suburban ridings around Vancouver that they've never really had success in before, and in fact breaking out into the Fraser Valley, which is historically a very conservative place. Federally, the Conservatives hold these seats by wide margins, and provincially they were held by the BC Liberal Party, which is the BC equivalent of a Conservative party. But the NDP took 5 ridings in the Fraser Valley, which was astonishing, and I think that the Liberals want to sort of see if they can make some gains in this area as well.
So are the dynamics the same for the federal race, do you think, as opposed to the provincial election we just went through?
It's a more complicated dynamic. Provincially, it's really a two-party system. So the NDP on the left, the Liberals, BC Liberals on the right. Whereas it's going to be a 3-party race, particularly in the Surrey ridings where the NDP can play strong. Getting out into the Fraser Valley, it's going to be more the Conservative Party that dominates. So the Liberals are going to have to play both the left and the right sides.
Do you think the Liberals will win more seats in Surrey?
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, you're a Liberal.
No, I'm actually NDP. But I'm going to vote in Liberal in the federal, but BC and NDP.
Why the difference?
Depending who doing what.
Who we are voting for, I don't know.
Oh, you haven't decided yet? No.
No.
What will go towards making your decision? How will you decide?
Whoever will give us more things, more benefits.
Yeah.
Who give us, the main thing
especially
is
for the kids.
Who give us more, who give us the vote.
I'm pretty satisfied with the way things are right now, especially in this pandemic. I think it was not perfect, but it could be better, but it could be worse, right? But I think pretty much we're okay.
So there's nothing to make you change your vote or to change your affiliations?
No, nothing.
And
I think it's become really divided these days, and people need to find a middle ground. So, you know, for me, it just, I conservative on certain things, liberal on certain things, so.
Makes it tough to decide.
Tough to decide.
I live in Canada for 50 years.
Yeah.
I've never changed. It's always liberal.
Always liberal?
Yeah. No, never changed.
Never changed? Are you going to change this time?
No.
Why do you stay with the Liberals?
They got me in here.
Key, how would you describe your political mood?
Oh, my political move is okay, good. I respect. I feel happy.
I am all my life liberal, and I don't care who is the prime minister.
So you're not going to change your vote?
Never. Never.
In this election, in this city, in Vancouver proper, what are the main issues?
The main thing for people in Vancouver is housing. It's been very difficult not to crack for all governments, municipal, provincial, and federal. There's a deep sense of dismay at the cost of living and the difficulties of trying to get by. And you have a large component of millennials who can't get into the housing market and are starting to grow desperate. This is part of what is making people move away from the city into the suburbs, but also leading into larger decisions.
Sorry to interrupt, but the fact that they're leaving and moving into the suburbs is changing voting patterns in the suburbs, right?
Exactly. That is part of what is happening in the Fraser Valley. People who are used to different kinds of things, who maybe aren't as conservative as most of those who are surrounding them and who have been there for 20 or 30 years.
For our next speaker, I get to introduce my MLA. I also happen to be her MP, the Minister of State for Child Care, somebody who has worked for a while, Katrina Chen. Katrina.
Liberal incumbent Terry Beach isn't in what you'd call a safe Liberal seat.
So much,
he could well be beaten by a New Democrat. But here he is at a daycare funding re-announcement, introducing a provincial New Democrat. In fact, one of the notable things of the pre-writ federal spending spree was the chumminess between federal Liberals and BC New Democrats. On the day NDP Premier John Horgan sat down for a burger with Justin Trudeau,
Nice. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, man. Thanks.
Nice to meet you.
Jagmeet Singh was on Vancouver Island unveiling some housing policies. And there wasn't an elected provincial New Democrat in sight.
Whether it's to rent or to own, we need more homes. And that's why we're committed to building 500,000 or 500,000 new homes that people can afford. This will make a big difference here in Cowichan Valley, on the island, and across Canada. It'll create jobs, it'll be a job stimulus, but also build homes that people can actually afford.
I think there must be a lot of friction with the federal NDP and the provincial NDP. I think that probably Jagmeet Singh is being driven crazy seeing John Horgan out there glad-handing with Trudeau and announcing big announcements on SkyTrain, spending billions of dollars on daycare. I think Jagmeet Singh would like some of that help. Obviously, on the ground, he is going to be relying on many of the same volunteers and campaign donors.
They're the same party.
It's the same party, and so on the ground, it's going to be many of the same people. But I think you would like to see, if not active support from the provincial government, at least neutrality.
Yeah.
And he's not getting that.
The optics don't look good from a federal point of view.
No, they don't. But of course, Justin Trudeau will he'll ride John Horgan's coattails if Horgan will let him.
The Honourable Aaron O'Toole.
Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole has been visiting BC too. In 2019, the Conservatives won 17 out of 42 seats in BC, mostly outside Metro Vancouver.
Thank you, Mark. Canada cannot afford more of the same from the Trudeau government and the NDP, Bloc, and Greens, who have propped them up at every stage.
Without the ability to spend federal cash, O'Toole doesn't get as much attention as the Prime Minister does when he visits here, and polling suggests most voters don't know much about the opposition leader. So, before the campaign began, O'Toole's political opponents were using attack ads to try and make an impression on British Columbians.
O'Toole even backs Jason Kenney in Alberta. He's cutting health workers and reducing nurses' salaries.
In a pandemic. It's disgusting.
Typical Conservative.
Aaron O'Toole, a typical Conservative, at the worst possible time.
How do you convince those voters that may be leaning to a progressive party to vote Conservative?
Well, look,
In 2019, we went from 9 caucus members in the Conservative caucus from British Columbia to 17. And so we did that by having a positive message, by working, having great candidates, a great platform, great leader, knocking on the doors. And we did really well in British Columbia. Look, we're going to try to replicate that. If you look at Port Moody, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, you look at Fleetwood, Port Kells, you look at some of the island ridings. We came very, very close. Another one would be South Okanagan, West Kootenay. We came very close, and that just shows that we got to tweak a few things here and there. And make sure that our appeal is strong in both urban, suburban, and rural environments, and to work harder than we ever had before. Now, the great thing for British Columbians is British Columbia is a battleground, and that means that there's going to be better candidates, better choice in political parties, and we're all going to be using our persuasion at the doors.
Justin Trudeau really has to be able to thread the needle quite carefully because he needs 2 things to happen. He needs NDP voters who don't really want to vote for him, but will if they have to take the threat of Erin O'Toole seriously enough to vote head and not vote heart. So he actually needs Erin O'Toole to have a really good campaign, which means that smothering him too easily and too soon in a campaign probably may not be a good idea. And by the way, again, I think when you are Erin O'Toole, and you've already been largely written off, you've got nowhere to go but up. And I think in the same way that Justin Trudeau burst onto the scene in 2015, and no one was really paying attention to him. Remember, that was the Harper versus Mulcair campaign. When you ignore those flanks or you write people off, just history tells us that's when they come out of nowhere. And so, we'll be watching that.
I think going for a federal election at this time is opportunistic.
And change your vote or how you plan to vote?
Yes, I think I'll vote Conservative.
I'm cranky with COVID. That's the bottom line. Everything is making me cranky. It's...
Would that affect how you plan to vote?
No.
I voted Liberal before, and I don't think I'll be voting Liberal in this election. Yeah.
Just because of what's happened over COVID?
Maybe not so much what's happened over COVID. What's happened with Jody Wilson-Raybould and some of the issues there. I think that's been the main reason why I've been moving away from the Liberal Party.
That's what's happened over the last little while relating to reconciliation, residential schools, COVID. Is it likely to change how you would vote federally?
I don't think so, but I would like to see some changes.
I feel as though the government, the current Liberal government, is more focused on appeasing their base than it is looking for the long-term financial future for Canadians.
We've got a lot of debt in this country. I don't know. I'm going to have to look at both the parties and see, what my choice is going to be. I really don't know at this point.
I'm a little bit disappointed in how the Green Party Foundation is not supporting their leader, and it doesn't give me a lot of confidence that the Green Party has enough unity to go forward into this election with any kind of strength. If I don't vote for the Green Party, I'll be voting for the NDP.
I'm very undecided.
What's going to help you make up your mind?
Just somebody who shows any amount of leadership capability at all. Just registering on the needle would be a step in the right direction. Till then, I might not even vote. So.
There are leadership factors insofar as if you're a progressive voter in BC, in Metro Vancouver, you're making a decision almost about voting with your head versus voting with your heart. And I think a lot of voters would actually prefer to vote with their hearts and vote NDP because over the last 6 years, they've seen in Justin Trudeau somebody who campaigned as the most woke bro you ever did see, but has had to govern more from the center. Things like the pipeline purchase, things we're not talking about today, those things are indelible, like they stay with people. And then you have Jagmeet Singh on the scene, and he's hip, and he's on Twitch, and he's on TikTok, and he appeals to younger voters in a big way. He appeals to women and progressives in a bigger way. Can he, and the big question, particularly in British Columbia, is can he actually convert that popularity into more seats?
On Vancouver Island, there are 3 ridings to watch on election night: Victoria, Nanaimo, and North Island. Victoria and North Island are held by the NDP, and Nanaimo is held by this man. Paul Manley has won 2 elections here for the Green Party. Because of internal divisions within the Greens, that may be harder to do this year. The riding has a history of electing New Democrats, but Manley's worried about Conservatives.
The last 2 elections, it was the Conservatives who came second, and I think they're going to be my main competitor again in this election. People in this community know me. I'm a known quantity. I've lived here a long time, and I've worked really hard in this community prior to being involved in politics, so people know what to expect from me, and I've worked really hard as an MP, so I think that my record stands for itself. Yeah.
Do you think the infighting within the party is going to have an impact on your chances of re-election?
There's always some impact with leadership and with party issues, but I think people voted for me as a local candidate in the last 2 elections that I was elected in. It was really about my own track record in the community and the work that I've done in this community, and I think that that's the track record I'll be running on, and that's what people are going to be looking at again.
BC politics is very, very regionalized. So on Vancouver Island, on southern Vancouver Island, it is historically now a battle between the NDP and the Greens, whereas the rest of the island, it's the NDP and the Conservatives. When we get to the interior of the province, it's mostly Conservative NDP battles, with the Conservatives taking the vast majority of the seats in the interior and the north. It's the lower mainland where we see the battles, but even in the lower mainland, it tends to spread out into a 2-party battle. So Liberal NDP in some ridings, but in the adjacent riding, it could be Liberal Conservative. So you really have to pay attention to local dynamics when you're looking at BC politics.
Thank you for coming. This is so exciting. We are not supposed to be here. They tell us that West Vancouver is Tory territory, is Liberal territory. We are here to find our people. They're here. They're everywhere.
Another interesting race in Metro Vancouver sees Avi Lewis running for the NDP in West Vancouver Sunshine Coast Sea to Sky country.
Thank you.
His father and grandfather are both NDP icons, but this riding has never elected a New Democrat.
I may be better known in Toronto because I started my broadcast career there. My partner Naomi Klein and I got married in her parents' front yard almost 25 years ago in Roberts Creek on the Sunshine Coast. We've had a place in Half Moon Bay for more than 15 years. And our son was born at the Seashell Hospital 9 years ago. We have deep roots in the riding, and this is where we live. This is our place. This is where we're making our stand. I don't feel like I chose this riding as much as this moment was when I needed to get out of my comfort zone and try to do something in this historic moment of overlapping emergencies. And this is where I live. And politics is place-based. This is where I got to make my stand. If I was just going to for the shortest route to the job, I would run an easier riding to win. That's not what it's about. It's about all of us coming together to face the climate emergency, the housing emergency, the emergency of racism and inequality, and that's everywhere.
You said initially when we were off camera that you thought people are cranky. What do you mean by that?
Well, look, here in British Columbia, we've had a combination of COVID restrictions, and obviously we've been fairly open. But then there's other things like the heat wave. A lot of people died during that, and smoke, and then also reconciliation. So, people, I think right now, they want to enjoy their little time off with their kids. They want to enjoy a summer, and then suddenly to be pulled into an election, I think they're going to say a pox on all your houses. At the same token, though, for me as an elected official, I love elections because people want to talk and they want to share where they want to see the country go. And it really gives me a real chance to kind of focus in on what they want.
An unknown factor in this election is the use of mail-in ballots. Tens of thousands of British Columbians voted by mail in the recent provincial election, and polling suggests that compared to other Canadians, BC voters are more likely to use a mail-in ballot.
Here's how that changes an election campaign, right? So, and I say this respectfully and kindly, you've covered a lot of election campaigns over the years, Ed, like a lot of campaigns. And so what we've seen in previous decades and previous elections, it's always about like the march to election day, and nothing is decided until election day. Yes, and campaigns can crumble in the last 4 days. Campaigns can spark alive in the last 4 days. Late momentum. The mail-in messes completely with the momentum factor, because if you are a party strategist, what you're trying to do is get your core vote that's already identified and said they'll support you, and get those ballots in right away. So you can count them, you know what you have, you no longer have to knock on doors and frantically phone people on E-Day and grab them by the scruff of their neck and drag them to a polling station. They're done. Yep. Now you can focus on swing voters. If you're a leader that's trying to break through and maybe waiting on a debate, it might be too late. If you're a leader who screws up early, maybe you don't get a chance to recover. If you're a leader who screws up late, maybe it doesn't matter as much. So it really, it changes everything in some ways.
Where's your office?
Talib Nur Muhammad is aiming for an office on Parliament Hill, and he knows that Liberal success in Vancouver-Granville means recapturing a riding critical to regaining a majority in the House of Commons.
Is there any pressure on you to make sure you win this riding? Because the party is depending on picking up some more seats in the Lower Mainland.
I mean, absolutely there's pressure. It's not from the party, though. I think it's important to have, for this riding, to have a voice in Parliament that is going to be part of government and part of making important decisions. So I think the pressure comes from that. Pressure comes from making sure folks who are well represented and making sure that, hopefully I'm that voice. But, it matters. Having a majority government matters, especially when you've got big material decisions to make for the country. And so every seat matters. My goal is this one. I got to focus right here. And, I can't really worry about anything else that's happening around me. I just got to make sure the folks here are the folks I want to represent, that I talk to as many of them as possible and give them a reason to support me.
And then one more for me, please. Over here. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. All right.
Many British Columbians complain that federal elections are often decided before the first vote is even counted in BC. And while that sometimes may be true, in 2015, the voters here helped give Justin Trudeau a majority, and they helped take it away in 2019. This year, the riding of Vancouver-Granville may well be a bellwether for the results of the national Liberal campaign. And just in case voters need reminding, their federal government has provided funding for a transit line here, too. For CPAC, this is Ed Watson in Vancouver.